A book without a reader is a tragedy. A reader without a book is death.
And with that super intense introduction, welcome to this month's episode of the 800s. I am your co host, Alex, and you heard from my very enthusiastic co host, Adam. And as always, thank you to the man who's making it happen behind the scenes, Alan. Just a heads up, we do apologize if this gets cut short today with the downfall of Skype. We are still testing out new sources. So, with that potential time limit, let's get right into it.
Yes. The only note I'd like to say ahead of time today is check out dmstable.com for all the information you could ever desire to know about us. That's all I got. Let's go.
All right, so this month on the 800s, we'll be discussing the first book of the Empyrean series, The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. As Gaiath Ward College stands at the heart of Navarre, a kingdom protected from invading forces by armies, magical wards, and fearsome dragon riders. To repel the invading forces of griffins and their riders, young men and women across the kingdom are recruited each year to the ranks of infantry, healer, scribe, and of course, dragon rider at the college. By all accounts, our protagonist, Violet Soren Gale, should be safely tucked away in the archives as a scribe. However, her mother, commander of the War College itself, and a dragon rider, demands that she enter the dragon rider's quadrant. Although frail of body, Violet's sharp mind and defiant determination see her through the deadly first test of the parapet, and she meets her scintillating destiny, upon joining the Fourth Wing.
Good, 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 good. All right. If this is your first time joining us, I'll give you a quick rundown of how our show works. We are a discussion show. What that means is Alex or myself will pose a topic or question. That topic or question can come from our own crazy minds or from chat. So if you have anything you'd like to talk about in the book, feel free to throw that into chat at any time and we'll grab it and throw it out there as a topic whenever we have a lull in the convo. After we pitch our topic or question, we'll discuss our own viewpoints on that topic to give you guys the chance to respond in chat. Feel free to throw up your thoughts in there, and we'll give you a shout out if you say something especially cool like words and stuff. That's pretty much how it works, though.
And as always, a quick disclaimer that we do cover adult topics and themes. This book is a no exception whatsoever. A quick, very horny disclaimer. Um, Anyways, bring kids around at your own discretion. Also, we're trying to create a fun and supportive community over here at DM's Table where people can feel free to indulge in all of the things that they love and are passionate about without any fear of judgment or teasing or what have you. So, in sum, be nice or fuck off. I felt like I had to match that enthusiasm.
Gotta at some point we've got to review some sort of Skyrim book that way you can go Fusro fuck off. So I know that was random.
I mean, we're not that far off with this one. So, anyways, with that, uh, why don't we just dive right in?
Yeah, sure thing. What were your initial thoughts of Fourth Wing?
Um, it gave me very severe Twilight flashbacks, like right from the get go. There's a few things that were very similar. There's parts of the premise that I found super interesting right from the beginning. Main character had very similar vibes, and the dialogue was very similar. I want to talk about each of these elements individually, so I won't go like too in depth about it. But I was like having a lot of very uh, similar impressions between the two books, not to be too comparative because I want this to be like a standalone um,
Yeah.
a review of this book, but it very much seems like it has a lot of young adult novel vibes, but this one very clearly is much more adult in the romance department. So, but those are my first impressions. How about you?
Yeah, I really like books that throw you right into some sort of conflict right off the bat. It's a good way to hash out a ton of necessary information. Um, Obviously it gives you that sense of holy crap, this thing just happened. I want to know more about what the heck this all means and what's going on and why is this happening and all that. The parapet thing I think did a nice job of filling that niche. Um, it made me interested to continue the book, is what I'm trying to say. I think it did a well done job of saying, "Hey, since you're here, why don't you stick around and find out more about the world?"
Yeah, I agree. It did a good job of like that initial world building setup and setting up like a source of main tension uh, that drives plot, which
Yeah.
as we've well established on this show is a key for you. So that did a pretty good job of that right up front as far as like creating a world that you want to get to know more about. Uh, Sounds like Via Straight kind of agrees with us. It's very engaging from the beginning. Uh, Apparently, also had some very standout characters right from the beginning. Beast Color says fucking Jack Barlow, and Via Straight brings up Zayden filling a niche. So why don't we make that our first uh, topic then? Which character, aside from our protagonist, you felt like made the biggest first impression in the book, and why?
Um, could you repeat that? Sorry, I lost connection for a second there.
Oh, that's all right. Which character, aside from our protagonist Violet, do you felt like made the biggest first impression in the book, and why?
Good question. Good question. Jack is a good answer, I feel like. Fucking Jack Barlow, but um um big first impression. I'm gonna go with the gold dragon. I want to talk about the gold dragon. Obviously
And Darna?
when somebody's when somebody's like, and there was this random character that stood out completely different from all of the other characters that they're supposed to be like. It's gonna be a key character. um I thought it was an interesting concept to have a dragon there that couldn't bond, and I'm curious to find out more about what the heck she was doing there to begin with. I assume at some point in the story it's going to come up where it's like, oh, by the way, I was there because of this secret plot reason.
Well, I'll not spoil as I've read more than just this book as of now.
Ah.
Um, as to whether or not that ends up being the case. But yeah, you're right. It was very clearly a character that was meant to be like, well, how do you make us pay attention to it? Make it the rarest thing possible in an already rare thing. Um, but yeah, Andarna's a good one. Looks like Bernie Sklar said Tarn made a great first impression. Hard to beat the second biggest dragon, also
Yeah.
in that same vein of how do we make people pay attention to them? Uh,
Is he the second biggest?
yeah, behind he's the second biggest behind the lead like commander of the forces of Navarre.
Oh,
I forget the guy's name, but yeah, they're both black dragons, so apparently they just grow bigger. It ends up playing a part. Scholar asks if I've read all three so far. I am halfway through the third book. Um, so no spoilies on the last one so far.
okay.
So for the character for me that made the biggest first impression was, I know this is a little weird because it's going to be a little bit out there. For first impressions, the one that that stood out to me was Rhiannon. I thought she stood out because we're presented very early on with basically Violet is the only person that we know of for the first couple chapters who isn't pretty singular minded in the way that they approach the world. Dragon Riders are on top. We always have to look out for ourselves. We have to beat everybody at all costs. And I think it's the first sign that there is depth to other characters in the world. Is a character that is willing to accept and give help, which I was starting to worry up to that point. And maybe this is just because it was my first impression of it. But I was starting to worry that, it's going to be another one of those books where the main character is the only person who thinks this way, except for it's faction 1, faction 2, and the one character who's stuck in between, very Romeo and Juliet type of thing.
Yeah.
But showing that there was some depth to the characters within the world, Rhiannon was the first to really do that for me. So she stood out and made a good first impression, the bigger first impression, right from
No, I
the
think that makes
beginning.
sense. I
So
think that makes sense. Everybody needs a good backup friend, friend who's there to back you up and
I
support
was
you
gonna
when
say
you're
backup friend. Man, you doing her dirty.
like a friend who backs you up. I realized that same thought when I was saying that. I was like, oh, that sounds terrible. B School Art loved her too, so that's you're not alone there. That's good. That's good. Uh let's do another topic. Um VS Drake wants to know what we thought of the plot in this book. Let's make that the topic.
All right. I guess I can start this one off. The plot for the book, I thought, was um, not bad, if a bit predictable. Um, we mentioned the dragons standing out. This is very much a Chekhov's gun, or in this case, Chekhov's dragon. Um, I was finding myself very easily being able to call out certain story beats. Nothing was particularly surprising, but it wasn't necessarily bad. I mean, we've read enough books now that we know that things are meant to follow the hero's journey, and this, on a base level, does that. You know, I There's enough compelling lore though in this book, including the idea of a hidden history, propaganda, and things like that, that add a certain level of mystery to the plot that I did actually enjoy. uh, some of it is a bit simplistic, I think, because the plot is trying to draw, or it felt like for me it was trying to draw us into I want you to think black and white, so that when I introduce this, shade of gray, or this, other potential option, it's supposed to be surprising. and some of that made certain things feel a bit tropey to me as far as like how the plot unfolded, but it was compelling enough, obviously, if I kept reading, to read
Yeah.
into the other books. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I actually I had a problem with the plot. Not necessarily the characteristics of the plot itself, but the way the plot was handled from a author standpoint. I found the plot to be incredibly linear, point after point throughout the entire book. There wasn't a lot of dynamic handling of events. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like hints about what was to come at the end of the book and the beginning of the book. There wasn't a lot of foreshadowing in this book. It was very much like an issue gets brought up, like just to take it from the start, the parapet, right? And then we go through the parapet, and then the parapet's done, and then we talk about the next thing that happens, and
Mm-hmm.
then that finishes, and then the next thing starts. Where something that a story that is more likely to draw the reader in will have something where it mixes all of the plot lines together and gives you tidbits here and there, kind of a web of plot instead of a line of plot. I
Yeah.
think it wasn't terribly done, but it did stand out to me as something that could have been improved upon.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I didn't have the words to articulate it so well, so thank you for tossing that
Yeah,
in. Um, I think that is the issue with the plot. And part of it, I think, is because the author relied so heavily on Violet to essentially do the work that the reader usually does in more complex webbed plot lines. Is
yeah,
Violet was the one who, when you had something that potentially could have been, and these are the possibilities, she came in and was like, as a point of order, expected to consolidate all that information in a way that it was very much. I think there could have been a better balance between show versus tell in this book. There was a lot more telling than there, and there could have been just showing and allowing the world to tell the story.
yeah,
Um, and instead, it was like you said, it was through actions of the characters, which can be compelling in scenes, but if it's your entire book, you lose something of the plot in that.
yeah.
Some
Sounds like Via Strake agrees. He says, "Yeah, it was this, and then this happens, and then this happens. Not much of therefore this happens." Yeah, that's a good way to handle it too. Is there wasn't a lot of cause and effect going on. Um, let's talk about so we kind of keeping along with the major chunks of books theme here. Let's talk about the world building.
um, uh, I think this was arguably the greatest strength of this book, personally. Um, there, again, are parts of it that are very tropey to be, there's the that typical setup of a school of there's different factions within the school that are competitive with each other, but there's always one that has the hierarchy and things like that. But
Yeah,
the little elements of like how the magic works, how the interactions between riders and dragons work, the culture of the world, particularly Navarre, because we find out that it is just this isolated country and that there's a lot more potentially going on. And those little elements that show that, I think that was the part where Yaros did the best job of allowing the broader web, so to speak, as you know mentioned, to do the heavy lifting and you know, the dragons in particular, you know, that's it's hard to go wrong with dragons if you do even, you know, remotely, you know, you put even a remote little bit of effort into it. But I did like that there was a decent soft magic system set up with something potentially more structured behind it. There is just
Um, Looks like we lost Alex. I hope I hope I'm still in view. I assumed it was my connection that kicked out, but oh, looks like Alex is back.
yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I have no idea where I cut off. So
Um, do you want to pick it back up or shall I just take over?
would you mind taking over, please? Thank you. I
No
will
worries. Yeah.
come back in a second. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I definitely see what you were talking about, Alex, with like the tropey stuff that's in this book. Um, it's I'm a sucker for school setting. I think it makes a great setting for a novel series just because it's so convenient to stick to the year guideline. It's definitely an overdone thing, but as long as you do it well, I think it's okay. Um,
yeah,
I think the idea behind this one with the main conflict being like the potential for that graduation slash going to second year slash uh succeeding in that war games thing made a compelling enough plot line. And it does flesh out the world that like yeah that would be a realistic thing to expect from a battle school to have some sort of war games thing that's huge and happens at the end of every year. um I liked the magic stuff. The magic stuff was good. I what I didn't like about the world building um is sorry, thinking of how to word this.
yeah, that's all right.
um there a lot of the thoughts were there was a heavy focus on you could die at any moment. Your life is hanging in the balance. And I feel like uh for a school that is training people to take over in a war that they're actively fighting, they would try harder to not kill their future force of people. Um, and to me that spoke to a weakness in the world building that their battle school cut their numbers down so drastically.
Yeah, they do a little bit to try to explain that, but I also had a similar issue with how certain things were handled. I tried to leave some of it, chalk some of it up to we're in the midst of learning the basics of this one setting, and we were talking about things that connect to stuff that's way outside of it, and the fact that it never gets questioned does feel a bit weird. But I thought that was a part of the world building, especially as you get to the end and you realized, oh, not all is as it seems. So what potential issues could be covered up by doing things the way that they do. That said, the emphasis on you're going to die or you could die at all times and the lack of consideration about what that does to people, especially if they've apparently been doing it for hundreds of years, is a bit odd. And a lot of it did feel like it insisted upon itself quite a bit. Like you only need to tell me it so many times before it just becomes overly repetitive, you know? And that's where that balance between showing and telling comes in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I this book did do an amount of telling instead of
Yeah.
showing. Um, what do you think the strongest feature of this book was? What stood out to you as the best part of this book?
Uh, I mean, for me, I still think the world building was the best part, but if I'm forced to think about like very specifically, um, I thought like the stuff surrounding the scribes and the deeper lore behind Basgiath and Navarre was the strong point. That was the part where there was just where that line between mystery and um, having enough knowledge to be excited by what you have was the best balance. I will say the other thing this book did reasonably well was there was some pretty good humor. I know B Scholar has mentioned it a couple times. The sassiness from the dragons,
Yeah,
Riddick as comic relief was pretty good, and placing that in places where it made sense and relieved tension was another strong point of the book, in my opinion.
yeah. I'll keep this brief because we are running out of our time for our video chat here. But for me, the best part of this was the world building, just like you said. I liked it. It was interesting for a magic system and to understand that more was going on in the world than just this random dragon outpost. Um, I liked I liked that the monsters from lower were actually real and fighting off in the distance somewhere. I feel like it's a little overly tropey to be like nobody believes they exist, but like you cross the border and they're right fucking there. But
Yeah.
but still, I thought it was an interesting thing to add in, and it fleshed out the world a little bit more to know that, this chunk has dragons, this has griffins, this has mythological creatures of death and destruction.
There's something bigger going on outside of this conflict we're told is here. You know, uh, yeah, I think that's a really good point.
uh 30 seconds or less. What were your final thoughts of this book?
Um, this feels more like a romance book. This is a YA romance book uh, that has very adult sexual components to it. That just happens to have a pretty decent YA set background setting. Uh, Interesting enough that I kept reading, but like this does very much fit a very specific demographic. I think if you're willing or like the romance to force yourself through or like the romance parts, go for it. It's a decent fantasy read, but if you don't like those things, you're not going to be able to avoid those parts, and they take up a good chunk of the book. So, not for everybody,
Yeah,
but not bad either.
no, I definitely get it. For me, I ended up liking this book. Um, I didn't think I was going to. but it turned out okay. Um, I had serious problems with the plot. I'm hoping that improves with the next book. I will read the next book. Um, it felt very much like a inexperienced author, inexperienced editor, not putting everything together right away. And it can be a learning experience for next time. I have high hopes for the way the world was going at the end of this book, and I hope to see more of the worldwide stuff that's gonna come down. So for me, this is a would recommend book. So
Yep. Yeah,
yeah.
don't recommend to anybody under 18 though. This is
Oh yeah. Yeah, the spicy bits,
explicit.
I gotta say that felt very out of place and didn't feel like it belonged with the rest of the book.
Yeah, it's probably because of the YA elements of it made it feel that way for me. Is like it's not something that we're not used to seeing. We've obviously seen it, but
Yeah. All right. V.S. Drake. It was a solid mid book. It was good, but man, that backlog, dull. He's got a lot of books to read. Uh, B. Scholar, did you give your final impressions? Nope, nope. She loved
oh,
it. She loved it. Yeah, it's big fan of hers. Yeah.
we didn't do our
um,
usual like favorite characters though. But I will say this: B Scholar Liam was my favorite character. Uh,
yeah,
Liam and Rhiannon were my favorite characters. But
yeah. I will say I appreciated that Yaros was not afraid to kill off characters.
yeah, and she created good side characters that weren't just like you know Riddick was a comic relief character, but it wasn't like, oh, we just have the comic relief, the love interest, the antagonist, and the protagonist.
Yeah. All right. Books for next time. We've got May 3rd next, right? Yeah, May 3rd, 1 week away.
Yep.
Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. And then after that will be War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells for June 28th.
Right.
Uh,
And coming
get
up in the
reading.
summer,
Yeah.
yep, we will have our beach read in July, and June is original recipe. So anything sci-fi fantasy goes, we'll have those votes up for you shortly, and we'll. If you have any suggestions for August themes or anything, we are still open. So get those to us as soon as you can. Remember, vote on Patreon, guys.
Yep, it's free. Go ahead and hit it up. We are DM's Table on Patreon. Link should be below your video. If you want to know more about us, we also have a YouTube channel where the DM's Table on the YouTube. The link is also below your video. We post all of our videos there. We also have an Etsy page, dmstable.com/Etsy. Fearless First. If you heard some music at the beginning of the show, that was Fearless First by Incompetech. If you want to try out audiobooks, I know that kind of came up a little bit tonight. You should check out Audible. Head over to dmstable.com/audible for a free trial. Speaking of dmstable.com, that's where you can find all of these links and more. You should check that out and see what else we do. Tough, but there's some things. There's some things. That's pretty much it for plugs, I think. I hope.
Right. Yep. Sorry, everybody, about the shorter than usual broadcast tonight, but thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next book next week.
Thank you guys for joining us, and hope to catch you next book.